can I move on to the next speaker? And then we're going to be talking a little bit about cooperative housing and leasehold reform. If I bring in Elaine Milford, again, a long-time cooperator, a lot of experience in this particular area in terms of promoting and developing support for housing cooperatives. Elaine has also been quite instrumental in lobbying the Welsh Government and the UK Government in pursuance of leasehold reform. Leasehold reform is an issue that is engaging very much at UK Government level and at Welsh Government level, and Welsh Government particularly because although there are things Welsh Government can do in respect of leasehold issues for the future, there are reservations in terms of past legal and contractual positions. So I think Elaine will explain all this and the issues there and the concerns that she has legally as well. Elaine, are you there ready to join us?
I am.
Well, the floor is yours, Elaine.
Well, good morning. Yes, okay. So I've worked with co-ops, housing co-ops not in recent years, but in the past, all kinds of co-ops from 600 strong coal miner groups to two-person self-build groups. And I've come to believe that cooperative principles and the principles of cooperation and democracy, one person, one vote, should be the cornerstone of any resident management group, be it a right to manage company or a common hold group. But to underpin that, a good legal structure is essential. Until 2010, interestingly enough, it was common for RTMs to register as a company limited by guarantee with a democratic structure. It was only during the Lib Dem coalition of 2010 that changed, and the law was changed to restrict RTMs to a non-democratic legal structure of a guarantee company, which had quite serious and detrimental effects on those groups wanting to self-manage. The implications of the change meant that directors could be self-appointing, and it was almost impossible to remove them, while decision-making became top-down, largely removing it from the membership and placing it instead in the hands of a very few people, without even the necessity to have an AGM. And the result of that is that a lot of groups who initially set up and who are very enthusiastic at wanting to self-manage eventually fail, because the power tends to be in the hands of a small committee of people, and the members very soon feel that they're powerless, they have no say, and are unable to fully participate or have their voices heard. Quite often, these self-appointed directors can hang on for years, and it's only when there's a crisis that maybe people get rid of them, manage somehow to get rid of them. So, for me, a co-op legal structure becomes very important. When a group of leaseholders or residents do come together to form their own management group company to run their site or apartment block, they tend to do so as a result of such ongoing dissatisfaction with their existing or previous management agent. It might be that they feel that their service charges are too high, which is an increasing problem these days, or they're paying things that they don't want. Almost always it's because they want control. They want to have a say in how the place where they live is run. In respect of a cooperative legal structure, a co-op legal structure encompasses the essential principles of democracy and participation, provides the fundamentals which enable them to function and to give them longevity. But how would it work? A cooperative legal structure is already available for registering such groups. It was developed by ourselves at Hayes Point, together with the Welsh Co-op Centre and the National Confederation of Housing Co-ops. the legal structure sets down an annual election process, AGM, and democratic membership control, i.e. one member, one vote. Every member pays £1 to join, and this is the limit of their investment in the company. If the company fails, they lose £1. Any relevant homeowner can join and stand for election to the board. When we sorry, this is linked to our collective freehold company that we set up in the hope that we will eventually buy our freehold. And we've set that so that once we have the right to buy our properties, we will instigate that legislation. It's relevant now because, quite simply, leasehold is a feudal system and a terrible system. It does not work. It never has worked. And it's and if you're a leaseholder, you never truly own your own home. The freeholder can impose their own management agent on you, charge exorbitant service charges and permissions. Now, these might be for if you want to keep a pet. Ours charges around £250 to £300 if you want to keep a cat or whatever. Or if you want to change your kitchen, that could be thousands. Yeah. And you have no say. You can't fight this. These are things that they will impose on you. And if you don't pay and you go ahead and do these things, you do open yourself up to having your property repossessed. And I think now we've got to the point where things have become so bad that people of all political persuasions now believe that leasehold should be abolished. Now, the long-awaited Freehold and Leasehold Reform Bill is currently making its way through the House of Lords and should complete its third reading in the coming weeks. We hope very much and expect that it will enable leaseholders to more easily and cheaply buy their freeholds collectively, far more cheaply than they currently do. And once that happens, they will need to establish an RTM, and in so doing, groups who collectively enfranchise will need a mechanism for managing their site or their block. While they could choose to employ a commercial management agent, they may well decide that that's something they want to do themselves, which is, I think, pretty much what we've decided we would like to do. It is essential that there is an option within that Reform Act to register a company with a cooperative legal structure. We lobbied the Law Commission during the whole process of the review. And we said, and in fact, even in the Law Commission report, it refers to our lobbying, which calling for a cooperative legal structure to be an option rather than the one which was mainly promoted, which is the company, non-democratic company of guarantee company. And one of their responses was that this was, they suggested it could be an option, but that argued that lawyers and institutions would not be familiar with it and that, this might cause problems. Well, as my argument would be that until 2010, those systems were in place, and really it is up for the banks and the institutions to get with the program and sort themselves out really and get with it. It's important now because at the moment there's a lot of talk of common hold, a system of collective ownership, which is popular throughout Europe and elsewhere. The Labour Party are supportive of this idea. However, nobody seems to have a very clear idea of what it is or exactly how it might work. A cross-party committee called an APPG was set up by the UK government with support from the Welsh government to explore how common hold might work and replace leasehold. Well, there are people with leaseholders' interests at heart on that group. There are also an awful lot of development companies, commercial managing agents, lease, who are the bane of the leaseholders, to be quite frank, appalling, and various other freeholder interest groups, basically seeking continue to be able to line their own pockets from whatever structures come forward. These are the very people pushing for non-democratic.
Minute, Elaine.
Fine, okay. I was shocked to discover that there was no representation from the co-op sector on that APG. I would have thought they'd been there like a shot. This is their area. This is them. You know, they've got so much to offer in terms of common hold, and I think they really need to get with it. So Hayes Point Collective Freehold, we set this up because we're sick and tired of having battles with our freeholder, like so many other groups. And we set up the group. Leaseholders contributed almost £300,000 towards the fund to collectively buy the freehold once the legal structures are in place for us to do so in the Leasehold Reform Bill. We've lobbied the Welsh Government, and we proposed that in so doing, to support these new co-op groups that we hope to see, that lease will be disbanded and replaced with a Welsh cooperative housing support agency to promote, support, train groups wanting to manage themselves under the banner of cooperation. And I think that's the only way forward. I really do. And that's something we will continue to lobby the Welsh Government for.
I look forward to hearing those in due course. I'm sure they'll be coming through. Elaine, listen, thank you ever so much for that very informative contribution. Just moving on again within the timetable, now looking at the area of community energy, and I'd like to bring on Councillor Ann Brocklesby. Ann is the leader of Monmouthshire County Council, elected in May 2022. She's also the Welsh Local Government Association spokesperson on climate change and social justice and vice chair of the Cardiff Capital Region Cabinet. She's been very involved in the Awel Aman Tawe, Wales' largest community energy group, involved in raising substantial sums for the first community wind farm in Wales. Really over to you now, Mary, if that's okay. Are you there?
I am, Mick, thank you.
Oh, there we are. Well, welcome.
Hello, everyone. So, Awel Aman Tawe, which is a charity, a community energy charity, was set up in 1998. So that's coming up to 26 years ago. And it was set up by local people in the Upper Aman and Swansea valleys, which is about 20 miles away from Swansea. And the prime drivers of setting it up was to tackle climate change. Some of you who are my age might remember Agenda 21, because that's where it came from, that whole commission around sustainable development. So it was also looking at how you could regenerate an area, post-industrial ex-coal mining area, for jobs that were green, that were sustainable, and it was local. And you might wonder why I'm starting from a point of a charity and not of the co-ops. Because the idea in 1998 was to develop a community wind farm. It took till 2017 for that to be realised. And a lot of that was to do with battles over planning, some local resistance, but actually large local support. And we know that because we ran one of the first local referendums where everybody over the age of 16 could vote as to whether they wanted a wind farm in their area. This is, as far as I know, still remains unique, and it was run through the Electoral Reform Society, in which the majority of people voted for. When it went to planning, that whole process was considered the same as one letter. And why I bring this up is because when we're thinking about participation in cooperatives and participation in community change. It's recognising that the law is not specific about what it should look like. I know this is not part of the Co-operative 2014 Act, but it is actually a barrier to be truly inclusive and truly participative. Having a community wind farm that was actually up and running, owned and largely supported, there'll always be opposition to wind farms, as you know, by the local community, gave us the base. I was chair until 2019, gave us a base to really think through what we could do to create jobs and how we should do it. It was always the intention that the wind farm would be run as a co-op. And so we have two co-ops, which are now among the biggest co-ops for renewables in the UK. That's Awel Co-op and Egni Co-op. And when we were thinking this through, beginning with Awel Co-op, how do you actually manage to raise the money that you need, but also make it inclusive? And that comes to an issue that Nathan raised, which is around the shares and the share offer that you can make. We made a decision that we would have 50p shares, but also that we would offer shares to schools and community organisations. And I know Dan is in the audience and he'll correct me if I'm wrong. I believe it was Scouts and Brownies. My memory's getting weak at my age. We did so for two reasons, really. One is to just have a share offer, which is self-selecting. You cannot be sure that you're reaching all parts of your community or allow people to feel that they are part of a co-op and not see finance as a barrier to do so. So while we had 50% shares and had individuals, I'm one of them, by the way, we also had organisations like the Plunkett, I think, large-scale cooperative organisations who were willing to invest in us, and we had the Brownies, the Scouts, and the schools. So you got that range, you got that diversity of ownership by thinking through what a share offer should and could look like. But secondly, by building that base with schools so that they have an ownership, you're starting to institutionalize the idea, not only of co-ops, but being part of the change towards a sustainable future. So a lot of the work that Awel Co-op and Awel Aman Tawe continues to do is with schools and with Sparks about tracking the amount of wind energy that's generated on our wind farm, tracking the amount of solar that's generated on their roofs, but also across all the sites of Egni across Wales. And we are saving 300k. And for members, it's knowing that we are part of that savings in energy. So that's one reason for being a co-op when it's a share-based offer. The other reason is because while we started as a charity back in 1998, like the previous speaker, how do you ensure that you remain rooted in your community? How do you ensure that you are accountable and forever responsive to the changing demands and needs of the community that you work with? And a co-op is fundamental to that quality assurance, the quality of cooperativism. And I think that's why we have always remained, or rather, not we, I'm no longer part of it, but why Awel Aman Tawe and the two co-ops and our vision for future co-ops has always remained in that space. We are located in the two valleys, but our reach is all across the UK. However, it is that local ownership, which we've now, and it was because of the wind farm and the surplus money that we generated that we could put back into that community, allowed us to buy our own, it was an old school, and turn it into Hubney Gorse, which is going to be is the centre for our community development, our arts and people engagement, our community transport, as well as the hub for our educational work and the administration of the wind and solar work that we do. So we have a visible cooperative face slap bang in the middle of the community, which the co-op bought. It was bought from the solar, well, we're still paying for all this, but you know, it was membership power that allowed us to leverage grants, to leverage money from the Development Bank of Wales to support the building of the wind farm, but also has enabled us to retrofit a zero carbon sustainable centre. Where have the barriers been? Less so, I think, around the 2014 Act, much more to do with planning barriers, which cut across, I think, a lot of community development and community asset building. And that's probably a subject for another seminar, David. And I think also around procurement. Why we've been able to work with local authorities has largely been because of champions within local authorities that are willing to re-look at the regulations, rethink how they can be interpreted for different models of enterprise, including cooperatives. Because if you look at the frameworks in which community renewable companies, the procurement frameworks, which you need to be on, sell to Wales, etc. There's an inherent bias against small scale cooperatives and social enterprises. One, because of the bureaucracy involved. Two, because of the sometimes absolutely obscure bureaucracy of the tender documents. I know of a very similar but procurement exercise where small-scale enterprise were hiring in consultants to write the tender bid because they couldn't fully understand how they could comply in order to write the substance of the bid. So there's that side. But if you have, as we did in Newport, have local...
You've got 1 minute, Marianne.
Okay. If you have officers, but also politicians that are willing to re-look at the regulatory framework for procurement, then you have a chance, as we did in Newport, in Pembrokeshire, to compete on a level playing field, but also give a different vision about how you install renewables, not just as a mechanism for reducing energy costs, but also for education and awareness, and building a whole movement around sustainable development. And co-op need to play a part in that.
Marianne, thank you ever so much for that contribution.